So this is pretty interesting. So this is actually a clip from MSNBC's Morning Joe. You guys all know Morning Joe, Joe Scarborough. Now, he has actually had some praise for Bernie Sanders in the past, quite a few times, I would say. But amidst this whole Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders back and forth, and the claim being made by Elizabeth Warren that Bernie Sanders said a woman can't win, Morning Joe actually came to Bernie's defense.
And they're talking about some private conversation from 2018. And I'm not getting in, on anybody's side, but do any of us really believe that Bernie Sanders is going to say, I don't think a woman can win, Elizabeth? Nobody's going to, come on, who's going to say that?
And he certainly wouldn't say it to Elizabeth Warren.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Who's going to say that?
We shouldn't underestimate just how tone-deaf Elizabeth Warren can sometimes be on the stump. She's great at policy, but her political touch is not as good as you might think it would be. And I think this latest leak from somebody close to the Warren campaign, fairly ill-disguised fingerprints there from the Warren campaign that Bernie told her 13 months ago a woman couldn't win, is an example of that. You know, it's clearly quite close to closing bell, 3 weeks to go. A fairly nefarious account of a conversation that no aides were present at. Just two of them, Warren and Sanders in the room, comes out at this time, and then she issues a statement saying, let's move on. You know, I think that's the kind of thing that probably could end up even benefiting Bernie Sanders, because he's seen as the Mr. Authenticity, Mr. Integrity, many faults, but those are seen as virtues. And I think that partly explains why this extraordinary story, this 78-year-old with 2 stents, could be winning the first 2 contests in the 2020 Democratic primaries.
Yeah, I thought the statement from Elizabeth last night was interesting. He did it. Let's move on.
So, as funny, the little ending note that Morning Joe has there where he says, he makes fun of Elizabeth Warren for basically being like, oh yeah, he said this crazy statement. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Let's go ahead and move on. That's a pretty hilarious little thing to throw in there. But absolutely, I think that anybody can really see through the ridiculously of Elizabeth Warren's claim. Why would Bernie Sanders say this face-to-face with Elizabeth Warren? And especially considering his track record, why would you bring it up just now? What is going on here? And so it's been pretty thoroughly debunked at this point for very obvious reasons, okay? Bernie Sanders has been on record for literally decades talking about how women, ought to be more, deserve to be more, involved in politics. In the 80s, he said that a woman could be president. In 2016, he pressured Elizabeth Warren to run for president. So, and then he obviously endorsed Hillary Clinton. So all of this is a bunch of bogus, okay? And the fact that Morning Joe can see through this, and some of the other hosts can't, although to be fair to Morning Joe, like Joe Scarborough, he does seem to be more legit towards Bernie. I'm not sure what it is, but he definitely has some fondness of Bernie Sanders. I don't think I've ever seen him talk poorly about Bernie Sanders. Now, that may just be me never having seen him say anything about him, but shout out to Morning Joe for this. Shout out to him bringing on his guest, essentially, and Al Sharpton seems to also be like, yeah, this is kind of bogus. I think anytime you just throw it out there and then analyze the whole story, I think you realize how utterly ridiculous it is. And then you realize also how horrible of a person Elizabeth Warren must be to basically be able to to create this lie, put it out, allow it to permeate, and then even after letting it permeate, she actually doubles down, or actually she's tripling down in this way. But shout out to Joe Scarborough.